Most people don't break in public. They break in silence, behind the smile, behind the I'm fine, behind the constant need for validation, attention, reassurance. And the terrifying part, emotional weakness doesn't look weak anymore. It looks normal. We live in a world where people collapse over opinions, lose sleep over rejection, and hand their peace to anyone who knows how to manipulate their emotions. One cold message ruins their day. One failure destroys their confidence. One betrayal turns their heart bitter forever. But Maya Angelou once revealed a truth most people never understand. Your emotional reactions are either your greatest power or the chains that control your entire life. Because emotionally weak people don't just suffer more, they become easier to control, easier to intimidate, easier to break. And the worst part? Most of them have no idea it's happening. Real strength is not loud. It's not aggression. It's not pretending not to care. True emotional strength is the ability to remain grounded when life tries to shake you apart. In this video, we're going to uncover the brutal habits, hidden mindsets, and quiet behaviors that keep people emotionally fragile, and the Maya Angelou wisdom that can transform you into someone life can no longer easily destroy. The most emotionally weak people are not the ones who cry, they're the ones who need constant proof that they matter. A reply, a compliment, attention, validation. And the terrifying part is, once someone realizes you need their approval to feel worthy, they own a piece of your peace. Maya Angelou understood this deeply. She knew that when your self-worth depends on other people, your emotions become a puppet controlled by strangers. That's why rejection feels like destruction to emotionally fragile people. They don't lose attention, they lose identity. But powerful people move differently. They stop begging to be chosen. They stop chasing reassurance. Because the moment you emotionally detach from validation, you become dangerous in a world built to manipulate insecurity. And most people will never understand what happens next when you finally stop needing them. Emotionally weak people always reveal themselves in one moment. The moment life doesn't go their way. One insult ruins their mood. One disagreement becomes emotional chaos. One delay, one rejection, one cold response. And suddenly their peace disappears. Why? Because they react before they think. Maya Angelou believed emotional control was a form of silent power, not weakness, not suppression, power. Because when a person reacts instantly, they expose their wounds to the world. Anger becomes predictable. Sadness becomes manipulation bait. And emotional people rarely realize how easily others learn their triggers. But emotionally strong people do something different. They pause. They observe. They refuse to let temporary emotions make permanent damage. That silence frustrates people. It confuses manipulators. Because calmness is intimidating in a world addicted to reactions. And the truth is, some people are secretly hoping you lose control. Because the moment you emotionally collapse, they gain power over you. But what happens when you stop giving people access to your reactions altogether? That's where the real transformation begins. The most powerful people in the room are usually the ones who care the least about controlling anyone. That's the hidden strength, emotionally weak. People never understand. They think attachment is love, obsession is loyalty, constant emotional dependence is connection. But Maya Angelou saw through that illusion. She understood that when you become emotionally attached to outcomes, people, or validation, you slowly lose yourself trying to hold everything together. Detachment is not coldness, it's self-respect. It's the ability to say, I will not destroy my peace trying to force someone to value me. And most people can't do that. They cling to relationships that drain them, chase people who already stopped choosing them, replay painful conversations in their minds for years, not because they're weak on the outside, but because internally they've tied their identity to things they cannot control. That's why emotionally strong people move differently. They understand a brutal truth. The more desperate you are to keep someone, the more power you hand them over your emotions. Your fear of loss becomes visible. Your anxiety becomes predictable. And manipulative people can smell emotional dependency from miles away, but detachment changes everything. When you stop begging for attention, your confidence grows quieter. When you stop explaining your worth, your presence becomes stronger. When you stop needing people to stay, you finally see who genuinely wants to. And suddenly, something terrifying happens. The people who once ignored you begin chasing your energy. The people who controlled your emotions lose access to your mind. Because emotional detachment creates a kind of mystery most people cannot handle, a calmness, a silence, a power. But here's the dangerous part nobody talks about. The moment you emotionally detach from unhealthy people, some of them will do everything possible to pull you back into emotional chaos. And if you don't recognize the signs early enough, you can lose all the progress you fought to build. Some wounds don't bleed. They beg for approval. A child who only received love when they performed well grows into an adult terrified of disappointing people. A child constantly criticized learns to over-explain, overthink, and apologize for existing. And years later, they call it personality, without realizing it's unresolved emotional survival. Maya Angelou understood something painfully deep about human behavior. People carry childhood emotions into adult relationships without even noticing. That's why emotionally weak people often crave constant reassurance. Not because they're needy by nature, but because somewhere in their past, they learned love could disappear without warning. So they chase validation. They fear abandonment. They panic when someone becomes distant. A delayed text feels personal. Silence feels like rejection. And the mind creates stories that slowly destroy emotional stability from the inside out. But here's the tragedy most people never confront. The world does not pause to heal your unhealed emotions. Manipulative people will use them. Toxic relationships will trigger them. And life will keep exposing the wounds you pretend no longer exist. That's why emotional strength begins with awareness. The moment you recognize that not every emotional reaction belongs to your present reality, you stop becoming a prisoner of your past. You begin separating truth from trauma. You stop expecting strangers to repair wounds they never created. And slowly, your emotional dependence starts breaking. You stop chasing people who confuse your nervous system. You stop needing constant reassurance to feel worthy. You stop interpreting every small change in behavior as proof you're unloved. Because emotionally strong people eventually learn one life-changing truth. Not everyone who triggers your emotions deserves access to your heart. But the deeper you heal, the more uncomfortable one realization becomes. Some of the emotional pain you blamed on others was actually created by patterns you never healed within yourself. And facing that truth is where most people emotionally collapse. Some people will betray you and still expect access to your heart afterward. That's the brutal reality emotionally weak people struggle to accept. They confuse forgiveness with self-abandonment. They keep reopening doors to people who repeatedly shattered their peace, hoping this time the pain will somehow become love. But Maya Angelou warned people about this kind of blindness. She believed one of the greatest forms of wisdom was seeing people clearly the first time they reveal themselves. Emotionally fragile people don't collapse because betrayal happened. They collapse because they refuse to emotionally accept what the betrayal exposed. So they create excuses. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe they'll change. Maybe if I love harder, they'll finally value me. And that's where emotional weakness becomes dangerous, because every time you ignore disrespect, you teach people your boundaries are negotiable. Every time you tolerate emotional manipulation, you slowly train yourself to believe pain is normal. And over time, your self-worth begins shrinking without you even noticing. Emotionally strong people understand something painful. Closure does not always come with apologies. Sometimes strength means accepting that a person showed you exactly who they are and walking away before your emotional health gets destroyed, trying to save the connection. That kind of detachment feels cruel at first. Your mind remembers the memories. Your heart remembers the potential. But emotional maturity means understanding that potential is not reality. Someone can have good moments and still be toxic to your peace. And here's the hidden truth most people avoid. The longer you emotionally cling to betrayal, the more you betray yourself. Because eventually, the pain stops coming from what they did and starts coming from what you continue allowing. And once a person realizes you'll always forgive them, no matter how deeply they hurt you, their respect for your emotional boundaries begins to disappear completely. The person who controls your emotions controls your life. Most people never realize how dangerous that is until it's too late. One person's opinion changes their mood. One rejection destroys their confidence. One moment of disrespect lives in their head for weeks. And slowly, without noticing, they hand the steering wheel of their emotional state to everyone around them. Maya Angelou believed emotional discipline was one of the rarest forms of strength because controlling others is easy. Intimidation is easy. Manipulation is easy. But mastering your own emotions when life provokes you, that requires power most people never develop. Emotionally weak people react to everything. They argue to prove themselves. They chase the last word. They need revenge to feel strong. But emotionally intelligent people understand something deeper. Every emotional reaction costs energy. And not every battle deserves access to your peace. That's why calm people are often misunderstood. Their silence looks passive, but internally, it's control. They know anger can make intelligent people destroy their own future in minutes. They know desperation can make people beg for attention from those who never respected them. And they know emotional impulsiveness is one of the fastest ways to lose self-respect. But here's the hidden truth Maya Angelou wanted people to understand. Your emotions are not enemies. They are signals, warnings, mirrors revealing what still has power over you. The problem begins when emotions stop being information and start becoming your identity. That's when people become emotionally fragile. They don't feel anger, they become anger. They don't experience sadness, they drown inside it. And eventually, they lose the ability to separate temporary feelings from permanent truth. But emotionally strong people practice something rare. They feel deeply without losing control. They pause before reacting. They protect their inner peace like it's sacred. Because they understand one life-changing truth most people learn too late. Not everyone deserves an emotional response from you. And once you master that skill, people can no longer manipulate your mind as easily as before. But the hardest emotional battle is not controlling your reactions to others. It's controlling the war happening inside yourself when nobody else can see it. There comes a moment in life when pain stops breaking you and starts revealing you. Most people spend years running from rejection, disrespect, failure, and heartbreak without realizing those experiences were trying to teach them something powerful. Maya Angelou understood this transformation better than most. She knew suffering could either make a person emotionally bitter or emotionally unshakable. And the difference was never the pain itself. It was the mindset created from it. Emotionally weak people let pain define their identity. One betrayal turns them cold forever. One humiliation destroys their confidence. One failure convinces them they're not enough. They carry emotional scars like permanent sentences written across their future. But emotionally strong people learn a different language from pain. They stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" That shift changes everything, because pain has a strange way of exposing illusions. It reveals fake relationships, fragile confidence, hidden insecurities, emotional dependencies people were too distracted to notice before. And sometimes the experiences that nearly destroy you become the exact experiences that free you. The rejection that forced you to build self-worth. The loneliness that taught you independence. The betrayal that opened your eyes to your own emotional blindness. Suddenly, your suffering stops being meaningless. It becomes transformation. That's why Maya Angelou's wisdom carried so much power. She didn't teach people to avoid pain. She taught them how to rise above it without losing themselves, to remain soft without becoming weak, aware without becoming bitter, strong without needing revenge. Because true emotional strength is not pretending nothing hurts. It's feeling everything and still refusing to let life harden your heart into something hateful. But almost nobody talks about the final stage of emotional growth. The moment you outgrow the version of yourself that once begged for things your healed mind no longer needs. Emotional weakness does not begin when you cry. It begins when you surrender control of your inner world to people, pain, rejection, fear, and temporary emotions. Maya Angelou understood that the strongest people are not the loudest. They are the ones who remain grounded while life tries to emotionally shake them apart. The ones who feel pain without becoming poison. The ones who face betrayal without losing their dignity. The ones who stop begging for validation and finally discover the power of self-respect. Because the truth is, life will test your emotions relentlessly. People will disappoint you. Some will manipulate your kindness. Some will leave without explanation. Some will only love the version of you they could control. But emotional strength is born the moment you stop asking the world to protect your peace and start protecting it yourself. And maybe that's the hardest lesson of all. Not everyone deserves access to your emotions. Not every opinion deserves space in your mind. Not every wound deserves to define your identity. One day, you will look back at the version of yourself who constantly needed reassurance, approval, and emotional rescue. And you won't recognize them anymore. Because healing changes your energy. Silence changes your presence. And emotional discipline changes the way the world responds to you. The question is, who would you become if nothing outside of you had the power to control your peace anymore?